So you say you'd manage the farm here, or just the whole?
Yeah, I manage Lashiba, just this one area. I'm here full time, permanently involved with the management of this actual part of the mountain. That's my job.
Okay.
Yeah.
But does Lashiba own all of? What sort of percentage of the mountain is under?
No, we're a very tiny percentage. Initially it started with a conservancy, which was the Western Soutpansberg Conservancy, and it's basically stretched from the Sand River just to the east here and through to Vivo, the end of the mountain.
Okay.
And then things snowballed, and there were more role players, and then the idea of a UNESCO supported biosphere came around. And Lashiba is just a tiny little core place, but the good thing about Lashiba is we're pretty central in this part of the mountain, and the western Soutpansberg is the more untouched side. It's bushveld with some beautiful Afro mountain forests, and we're in a mist belt. So the diversity is extremely high here. But just to give you an idea, from Thohoyandou in the mountains about 120 kilometers long, but Thohoyandou in the east side, the average rainfall is 1,250 mils. And Vivo, the east side of the mountain, the same mountain, they have something like 300 mil, 400 mil. So the diversity in plants, animals, species changes. This mountain is just, it's east-west and it changes. So every farm is different. We're on the plateau, so we're in the core, because the way a biosphere works is you have your core protected area, which is the mountain itself. Then you have your buffer zones off the mountain where you're still trying to protect. And, I think the biggest thing about a biosphere, um, it's not to put up fences and protect an area and keep people out or anything like that. It's more to do with trying to um, places like this with huge geographical area with huge diversity in plants, animals, insects, spiders, and things like that. They have to be documented. I mean, they could go and you'll never know they were ever here. And if possible, protect those things. And I think that's where the biosphere is a huge thing. It needs to protect the people, the sustainability of the medicines they use, the trees they cut, the plants they use. Most biospheres are trying to protect land, only. This one is a bit different because it includes all the Vhembe people that live in the mountains.
Are there a lot of
And
people living in the mountains?
the biosphere encompasses all. It's the mountains. So basically, the Vhembe people live in the mountains, and it's that is the key to this thing, is trying to make it all sustainable and protected, without chucking people out and just trying to protect a piece of land. It's trying to work out how to make it sustainable. So the documentation of what plants, what animals, what species there are, and the monitoring of those things to make sure that when things go out of balance, you can actually check and balance to try bring things back in alignment, I think is the main function of this. Many, as I say, of these biospheres are trying to keep people out of land. They're trying to, this is protected, don't touch it, we don't want you to touch it, kind of thing. This is nothing like that. This is a very different situation.
So how are you bringing people into the land here?
It's not bringing them in. If they're in, trying to sustain it. If
And so more ways is that interaction happening?
no, well, the thing is, all the role players come to the meetings. When they have the biosphere meetings, your tribal and your civics, like the towns, the government people involved in this area, are part of the whole thing. To try and keep this beautiful geographic area, this mountain range, sustainable, that people can still, we're not trying to make everybody game farmers to make it a big eco area with only wild animals. There's cattle farmers, there's game farmers, there's guy growing tomatoes and cabbages, and the whole idea is to just try and keep the sustainability of it and not to impact on the mountain negatively. Not to go into a huge monoculture and go plant eucalyptus trees and destroy the core area. So I think without the biosphere and trying to keep a balance going, it would be, this mountain range could lose its diversity and its beauty eventually.
Have you seen much change since it was declared a biosphere, or is it much more gradual than that?
You know, I don't think it's the kind of thing where you're going to get a sudden change, where this happens or. Yeah, I think it's firstly the first step. I think is to and it's been very good working with Lejuma and Professor Geiger and them is to document what's here. I was saying we have huge rainfall difference across the mountain range. So to work out which plants, animals, insects, spiders are in that area, I think the huge job is to identify the huge diversity here first. And then when you see things are out of balance, like a certain tree is being abused, cut by traditional healers or people just wanting to exploit plants and look at cycad populations that are being ripped out to sell to people, that kind of thing has to stop. But there's already legislation in those regards. It's just that once it becomes a biosphere, more role players can actually complain and put it under the microscope and say this area is being abused. And I think it's more that kind of thing. It's not a thing where you're going to see an overnight change in ownership of land or anything like that.
That actually, when you have sort of problems crop up like that, everyone being part of a biosphere, does that then help them to tackle it collectively, or how does that actually work?
I think it exposes it far easier. I think things can go. I think things can go on for years and nobody notices. But if someone suddenly starts to remove every tree in the core area of the biosphere and want to go and plant a huge monoculture or something like that, I think people realize that, hold on, this is an area that is protected. It's not supposed to happen.
But it's not legally protected.
I don't know that side of the biosphere. I basically deal with I'm a botanist, and medicinal plants are my interest, and a little bit of archaeology and things like that. The policing of this kind of thing, that's John Wood and the people who have actually formed this thing. But with the status of UNESCO as being recognizing you, it should pull a lot of flags with government and other people to not let this area get exploited to the point where it's not sustainable. So I think although it's not a policed area with patrols running around it stopping things, at least things come to light when things are wrong. On other fronts similar to what we're talking about, but like the leopard, they've been doing leopard studies and they found terrible information. I mean, when we came here 23 years ago, we had a dead carcass, and we once sat out at night and 7 different leopard came in that one night. We had a young giraffe die about 2 years ago, and we saw 4 leopard come in that one night. It's different leopard. In fact, we caught all 4 at different areas just in and out of the camera range. We could see the eyes and we knew it was leopard coming in on this giraffe. The information they're gathering from those cameras is showing that the leopard population is dropping at an alarming rate. And there's a total ban on leopard hunting and things like that as a result. Now, being part of the biosphere, you start to realize that farmers are actually having to remove these animals themselves. They're shooting and burying them or snaring them or poisoning them. Because there's a ban on shooting leopard in hunting circles. And there are a lot of hunting operations in this general area of South Africa. So in your biosphere, having something like that, a camera study, where you're actually learning what's going on, because how would you know? They're nocturnal. You won't see them. But these people providing funding, cameras, they don't generally do that kind of thing unless you have like an area like a conservancy or a biosphere where they can put it. You start to get information on populations, how many there are, what the problems are, So that's the kind of monitoring and policing you talk about. It's up to the government and the police to sort out people that have broken rules, killed animals illegally and stuff like that. But for conservationists, you want to keep an idea of what's happening in that area. And that's what I think is the Biosphere does well, is that the funding comes in for big projects where you checking populations and monitoring things in a different way.
Now, all the farms within the biosphere, then, have you dropped the fences, or how do the corridors work?
You know, one of the biggest issues, I think, is land ownership. You know, everybody knows South Africa's past. You know that there were people removed. It's no secret. You know, people lived in places. I don't think fences will ever be removed in an area like this if those situations don't sort out. The ownership of land is very important. I mean, for us as a reserve full of animals, to go and open all our fences and the next door neighbours just go and shoot all the animals as they cross into their properties, you know, that's it's pointless. So that isn't one of the actual main issues with the biosphere, to remove fences. You know, yeah, because
how much coordination there was among the farmers.
No, people are not willing to remove fences. In the future, I do believe it could be a huge thing that could happen, that the core area fences are removed and species like elephant and bigger game could be introduced if that was what people decided they wanted. You know, but as I say, at this moment, there are people farming cattle, there are people hunting on farms, there are people like us that do pure tourism. We're not involved in hunting in any way or form. So we all have different businesses running in this area.
So are there guys in the biosphere that are quite anti the biosphere or anti the concept?
They're people who don't trust, I think, more than anti. I think they kind of don't trust the concept. Like you say, they think, oh, we all want to remove fences, and then those animals are mine, and this is going to happen. And so there are trust issues with certain communities and individuals, and that old ethic that I own that land. Leshiba's whole philosophy is that we're just caretakers. I mean, this mountain's going to be here a couple of thousand years after we're all dead, you know. So we've just got a short period of time in this place, and we try and make the best of it. Keep it sustainable, keep it viable, notice problems. I mean, there's strange problems happening. We've seen, you know, the big candelabra trees, euphorbias. They're all dying on the mountain here. It takes researchers to come in and see what the issues are, how it works. I mean, I love botany, but I'm not a scientist who's going to find the reason why all these trees are dying. There's cycad beetles destroying huge cycad forests on this mountain that are still left, very rare things, cycad forests. That kind of policing and checking to try to keep a balance, and even nature has its own thing that goes out of balance every now and then. That's the kind of protection you're looking for. It doesn't matter if that guy's a cattle farmer, but he's got cycads. You want to be able to go into his property, him to trust you and say, look here, we're here with the biosphere. We've heard reports of this. You know us. You're part of our group. We're just here to try and help and see. That's the kind of interaction you're looking for, rather than we want to take over your land, open your fences, and we want you to be part. You know, that kind of pressure is not...
Rather than being like a government, it's more like a community.
Yeah, it's just people buying into the concept of keeping it sustainable and looking after the mountains, fauna and flora, and insects and whatever.
And what work are you doing with medicinal plants?
It's just a passion of mine, interest. It stems from my interest in the Bushman people, reading old documents of plants the Bushman people used and stuff. And then we have workers here that have lived here their whole lives. Their grandfathers lived here, and they have a knowledge of plants. So, you know, it's just something I'm interested in. There are proper ethnobotanists that come in. We've got friends, actually, are ethnobotanists that work in Brazil and various things. And they are fascinated by the diversity of plants and trees. I mean, this property has 388 tree species. The whole Kruger Park, I think, only has 390 something.
Yo.
So to give you an idea, we 7 kilometers by 3 on this plateau. And we have almost exactly the same amount of tree species as the whole Kruger Park.
Which is what?
Which is huge. I mean, you know how big the Kruger Park is. So that's just to give you an idea, and that's just trees.
Do you have any idea?
You see, my interest is trees. The plant diversity is huge. And out there is a cure for everything. It's there. And you know, the one of the biggest problems was the displacement of the Bushmen. And then in modern South Africa, displacement of the African people. One of the things that the Biosphere is always working towards is not putting up bigger fences between people, is to actually try and get the interaction. There are lots of African healers that are in their late years, in their 80s, 90s, that know medicinal cures, but because they were removed into that area at the bottom of the mountain where you might get 30 tree species, they haven't been able to access these plants and trees for over 30, 40 years. The knowledge is going. So, in this Biosphere thing, hopefully that interaction that people can share knowledge of these old plants that they knew, that they now you could. I mean, for us, if a Sangoma had to say to me, if he comes on the farm, could he harvest some plants? My reply would be yes. But I would like to go with you to make sure it's done sustainably and in the correct way. And that if you are going to remove bark from a tree, you don't ring bark the tree. It takes that give and take. But in that, he's going to see that I see what he does. So he's got to trust me, and I can open the pantry. That's basically the kind of situations you're looking at. Is that you actually want those interactions. You don't want that knowledge to go. I mean, I try to read up on the Bushmen, and those people that knew those plants are gone. They're not here anymore, So we're just getting these tiny little bits and pieces of this puzzle that probably was, complex. They knew plants that could heal virtually everything, and we just pick you off little things that help for a chest problem. We've lost a lot of the knowledge that we should have had. We've basically gone backwards.
It's a topic that's come up unexpectedly in almost every single biosphere we've visited. Is the relationship with traditional healers and things. And it's talking about trust in the K2C biosphere though. We sat and spoke to a traditional healer there, and he said, he says the problem is they come in here and they come under the skies of, we need to preserve your knowledge, and we teach them. And then they go off and make these patented drugs out of it, and we get nothing.
It is one of the problems, Look, I think if you're looking at a plant that's going to cure HIV, and you can save half your population, I think there's issues in that whole thing. I think if I knew a plant that could save millions of people, to impart that knowledge and save those people would be part of my moral duty. I wouldn't, the payment wouldn't be the issue. I mean, I think those are the levels you have to eventually get to. I think traditional healers, it is that they know that medication and their clients will come to them for that reason. So they hold on to their secrets. But when you're looking at major health issues and problems and things that can really help people, I don't know, I don't think they should be patented by one company, and I think there should be shared profit. But you've got two bad sides. You've got companies who want to have that plant chemically formulated and own it when it's been used for thousands of years by people, which I think is totally wrong. And then you've got traditional healers, I think, are also wrong by keeping secrets that can help people, and their obligation should be to help people rather, as doctors do in our modern Western medicine. You share kind of your knowledge. If a surgeon's learned a new way of curing someone, doing an operation, he doesn't keep it to himself. More people around the world get to be saved. And I think that's the kind of thing they've got to look at. They're both wrong. I think they're both wrong. It's got to be that they do get money for their medicine, but they also have to know to understand that company has to make money if they're going to do clinical trials for 10 years.